You're probably the only person that never called the
I might
president
be.
back in the history of the world, besides maybe Kim Jong-un.
Yeah, but the funny thing is, I say all the time, I thought about that, and even though it may have been the proximate cause for my losing the best job I will ever have and have ever had, I'm more proud of that decision than any other time, because what was he doing? Why was he calling me? And maybe he was innocent to a point, but based on all sorts of other evidence that we've seen since, his view of people high up in law enforcement is to protect him, not to uphold the law, not to engage in law enforcement in an independent way. It's in the Mueller report too. Donald Trump literally saying, about Jeff Sessions and to Jeff Sessions, your job is to protect me. You're supposed to protect me. Why are you recused from the investigation that might harm me? The implication being, you're my guy. He says things in the report, whatever you think about Eric Holder or Bobby Kennedy, says, you don't think that Eric Holder protected the president? You don't think that Bobby Kennedy protected the president? Whatever you think of that allegation, the idea that he was calling me for some innocent reason and not to be my friend or not to have me be his friend and do right by him, if and when, look at how history has unfolded, if and when maybe there was an investigation of his personal lawyer named Michael Cohen, what do you think he would have expected from me then? How then, by the way, would it have looked if it became known that there were calls that I took and accepted and spoke to the president on the phone amidst an investigation of Michael Cohen? Not right. It seems odd, I think, to a lot of people's ears, and I've gotten into arguments with people about this, people in business. He's your boss, right? He hired you, right? Yes. He kept you on, yes. He could fire you, yes. You don't return his call? What kind of an asshole are you? I'm like, I'll explain the kind of asshole I am. And then I go through this. It takes a while.
To explain the executive branch and the judicial branch.
And also to explain look, part of the reason I wrote the book too is, not all decisions are so easy. People say, well, obviously you return the call, or obviously you arrest, or obviously you charge, the head of JP Morgan because the financial crisis is happening. These things are not so obvious. And if you have people and I know not everyone likes the answer, and we can have a discussion about it, like you and I are having, but this idea that I think you want people like the men and women in the Southern District of New York who don't just run off half-cocked. You actually think, I didn't return the call, but we talked about it for like an hour and 15 minutes.
It was a difficult decision. You had to weigh in.
You have to go through the decision tree. You have to consider the options. You have to go back and forth. My initial inclination was to return the call for all the reasons that we're discussing, right? But sometimes your first, knee-jerk reaction is not the right one, right? Whether it's in response to a question at a news conference, or it's how to respond to somebody who hasn't, done their job as well as you wanted them to do. Like the first, by the way, the great forum for bad first takes is Twitter, and even on that, platform, it pays to take a deep breath, think about it before you act.
But if you had called him back, you probably would still have that job. No,
I don't know about that. At some point, he might have soured on me. At some point, again, I don't actually know if I was asked to leave because of that, because a lot of the other people were asked to leave also. It's hard to believe it didn't hasten my departure. I think at some point, the administration became paranoid about the quote-unquote deep state, anybody who had some association with Barack Obama, and he just, he may have just thought better of his idea to have me in place. And then when I didn't return his call, what could be more disloyal than not returning the call? Maybe that sealed the deal, but I actually have no idea what he was thinking.
Fast forward to today, what do you make of him now?
I'm just checking the time very ostentatiously while the cameras are rolling, because there's no clock. I see how you have no clock in here.
Why would you have a clock in here?
So the third degree can go on for many, many hours.
Third degree? You're the king of the third degree.
Even in interrogations, when people are in police custody, there's a clock. So the guy can see how much passage of time is happening.
This is next level here in London. Plus you're forgetting who I am, right?
What's your question?
My question was, fast forward to today. Now you see everything that's happened with Trump, the Mueller investigation, all that stuff that's coming out. Do you assess him differently, or does it all now kind of make sense, what you initially felt?
Oh, I think any concerns that you have about his undermining of institutions, the way he denigrates the press, the way he singles out particular members of the judiciary for attack and vitriol, how he publicly states his belief in the word of Vladimir Putin over the intelligence community in his own country, and the FBI, the premier law enforcement agency in his own country. All those things, I think, have been concerns from going way back. I think they just become more concrete over time.
Does this happen because he comes from this New York style business background as opposed to all of our other politicians?
Does what happen?
Does this kind of break in protocol, this like no...
No, look, this idea that Donald Trump, I guess, if you're saying, does he deliberately break protocol and that's how he is because he's brash, or he doesn't know the protocol so he's to be forgiven for it, I'm not sure which one you're saying. Because I have a view as to one of those.
I mean, part of it's a cultural thing. Like everyone knows that the president doesn't do this and these offices don't do this and you don't do that. And he comes in and just says, I'm going to do whatever I want to do.
Whatever I want.
We've never seen this before.
He's not constrained by anything. Because I think, not to be armchair psychologist, although this is a very nice armchair.
Thank you.
In which to be a psychologist. His, he's never been the head of a publicly traded company, right? His will be done is what he has always understood, whether it's to steer his company towards bankruptcy, as he's done like a number of times. If you look at the allegations made against the Trump Foundation by the New York State Attorney General, the place is run just sort of as like a piggy bank for Donald Trump. There are no controls in place. There are no procedures. There's never been like an outside board of any organization of his that I'm aware of that has held him in check or held him accountable or asked him any tough questions ever. It's a bunch of people who are close to him and who protect him and who are members of his family, who are loyal to him. He does whatever he wants. And he turns his failures into success and often turns his successes into failures. And that's how he conducts himself. And he's never had any experience in sort of, the rigorous ethical way that public servants are supposed to conduct themselves. So he violates, by the way, ethical rules on a daily basis that would cause anyone else in the government to be fired. Tweeting support for particular, products like television shows or newspapers from an official presidential account, you can't do that. If I had done that as U.S. attorney, if I said, hey, buy Coca-Cola, I would have gotten a phone call. My Twitter account would have been suspended by the Department of Justice. So he's built that way. He likes to do what he likes to do, and he's figured out that actually I'm the president, and on a lot of these things, nobody can stop me.
I mean, that's a strange conundrum because legally he can't be stopped, even though it's unethical, and the public might reelect him.
They might. People should say that again and again, so it sinks in.
Could he be prosecuted, or will he be prosecuted after he leaves office?
I don't know. The Mueller report makes very clear that it abides by the conclusion of the Office of Legal Counsel that says a sitting president in the United States cannot be indicted or prosecuted. But also makes clear that they also believe that a president can be indicted and prosecuted once he leaves office. Not the president, a former president can be prosecuted. And then it goes on to say, in a way that I think is striking, that a president also can be investigated while in office, just can't be indicted, prosecuted. So I can't state that the president has committed the crime of obstruction because that would be unfair because he wouldn't be able to defend himself because there would be no trial at which he could clear his name. And then the final thing it says, that's the stark thing, is therefore we have conducted a thorough investigation to preserve the evidence while memories are fresh and while documents are available. That sounds a lot to me like at least Bob Mueller thinks there is the at least theoretical possibility of prosecution after he leaves the presidency.
But technically he didn't collude with the Russians.
Well, so you're using this term collude and then you're qualifying it with technically. So I don't know quite what that means. What Bob Mueller made very clear about when he used the term collusion is he didn't look at collusion, whatever that means. That's an informal term that journalists and Donald Trump himself have used to he has used it for purposes of setting a bar. Depending on what your understanding of the informal meaning of collusion is, the colloquial sense of collusion, as Adam Schiff, who's the chair of the Intelligence Committee in the House, there's lots of evidence that they took advantage of and were welcoming of help from the Russians and the timing of the email dumps and all sorts of other things for WikiLeaks. Is that collusion? I think there's a good argument that is, but that's of no real consequence other than rhetorically. What Mueller really found was that there was not enough evidence. There was not enough evidence to show that Donald Trump or members of his campaign conspired, as the law defines conspiracy, to interfere with the election in 2016 or engage in hacking, which interfered with the election in 2016. So those are very different things to me.